So thanks for joining us for another installment of the E-UNI Q&A series. Today we're joined by Mangala Solaris of RvB, who is a current member of the 8th Council of Stellar Management and is running for the 9th Council of Stellar Management, if I can only get the words out. If you've been on these Q&As before, you know how this works. I will ask you to deposit any questions you have in lecture.euni chat, prefix them with a Q, so we can keep track of them more easily. And I'm just going to pick the questions from there and pose them to Mangala as he stops talking, essentially. So yeah, first off, Mangala, if you'd like to introduce yourself, go ahead. In the meantime, everybody else can start posting their questions in lecture chat.
Hi guys, I'm Mangala Solaris. As Titus obviously told you, I've been playing EVE now for 7 years. I've done a bit of everything in my time. I've lived in Null, I've dabbled in low-sec, I've done industry, missions, PvE, a little bit like, the majority of you guys. For the past few years, I've been in RvB as a line member and repeatedly a member of command. I'm responsible for ensuring that several of RvB's large events actually happen. I help out in our wartime efforts, and I also run one of EVE's largest MPSI public roams, RvB Ganked. And as Titus says, for the past year, I'm on the 8th Council of Stellar Management. I'm currently running for the 9th. I'm running on a similar platform to what I did last year, which is, continued quality of life improvements to the game. And also, I'm running to give a voice to some of the people that think the CSM is all about the large nullsec blocks.
Well, okay, good. Questions have been slow so far. We've only got one. I'm not even going to try to pronounce character names, okay? So the first question is going to be, how do you think the Season 9 campaign and the election process has gone so far?
Quieter than last year, on all fronts. I mean, there's candidates out there doing their thing, but nothing as vastly organised as various parts of the community did last year. And CCP seemed to have fallen down on that front yet again. There was a little bit of work with dead blogs and the video release that they did last week of the Winter Summit CSM 8 attendees talking about the CSM, but not really much on their front. There should be more engagement from the player base in the CSM, and it should be led by CCP. But at the same time, the community should be really, really getting behind candidates. Candidates should be out there a lot more visibly than they are.
Okay.
I've just seen Yuki's question.
Yeah. I'm just going to read it out for the people that listen to the recording of this. Yuki asks, why should I personally bother voting for the CSM?
That's an interesting question. From a personal point of view, I think that a game developer giving players an opportunity to appoint representatives on their behalf to liaise with the developers and bring issues to their attention is a wonderful thing. I love that sort of process. I love being able to reach out and touch a developer and, ask them a direct question. And I think that, yeah, you have forums, and they're also a great source of feedback, especially with Fozzie and Rise being on the team. They're massive forum users. They're constantly on there, especially in features and ideas. But sometimes the pushing gets missed. So having a group like the CSM that you can point to and say, hey guys, this has been posted and said elsewhere, or this has been raised in an in-game chat or on a blog or something, could you maybe point it at the developers? Having a filter of sorts is incredibly useful. And Yuki, I'm not sure of your affiliation. I haven't, clicked on your name or anything, but assuming you're just a regular guy who maybe lives in HiSec or something, your voice is important as everyone else's. You pay to play the game, everyone else pays to play the game in various ways, so you should be able to have a way of getting yourself heard with the developers that isn't going to get lost on a forum somewhere.
Okay. Once again, a follow-up to the previous answer. You said that candidates should have been more visible. Who do you think is to blame for that?
Again, I think in some ways it's the candidates to blame. I don't think any of the candidates, myself included, have ever run a real-life political campaign for office. So we're sort of making this up as we go along. But at the same time, maybe a few more tools on the part of CCP and, as I say, some more exposure from there. I think the blame is equally shared between candidates and CCP.
All right. Next question is going to be, what do you want to change to make the lives of us HiSec players better? And maybe, if I may add, what have you personally been suggesting to make the lives of us HiSec players better?
Hang on, I'm just reading the guy's name. Kurthor. To answer you on a broad scope, I'd like to see some of the primary HiSec activities like PvE, some of the, like PvE, for instance, made a little more challenging, but still keeping, a way of them helping you make ISK, helping you, learn various game mechanics. I don't want to have HiSec just as a place where you make stupidly easy ISK and get bored after a couple of months because missions are pointlessly boring. I'd love to see a better mission system. Something that is a lot more engaging, gives you, a larger sense of scope and scale in those sorts of activities. I mean, I have my own ideas on PvE, and not a lot of people agree with them. I'd love to see more variation on missions. By all means, keep the current mission system, but throw in other missions that maybe encourage you to fit your ship more for PvP, or, scale down some of the incursion style systems so that smaller groups like 2 or 3 people can take part, can have content along those difficulty lines that's just as challenging but works with just a few of you, or maybe yourself and a couple of alts. And as to what I've done so far, the thing with CSMA is we've been very much a team affair, and it's really hard to say if I've personally done anything, and so far not too much has come out that is going to change HiSec. However, I'm sure you all saw today's industry blog, which is the second of 6. As you see more and more of those, you will see a lot more changes to how industry is going to be done, especially here in HiSec. And the CSM has had quite a bit of input on those.
All right. Next follow-up question. RvB has about 7,000 members. How come we, as if University, blobbed you all the time in the recent war?
To answer, Yuki, as Thekla said following in chat, people can put characters in and play them when they want. There's no CTAs, there's no, right, we're going to war with E-UNI. Every single one of you has to log in. So you basically form active players who, 1, wanted to take part in the war, and 2, had time to do it. I mean, I myself, once I got told, right, Mang, this war's happening, get to it, thought, yay, I'll have loads of time to do it. And then my time last week just went out of the window with electioneering, with work, with various other real life things. And no doubt it was the same for other people. Real life got underway. I mean, there was a lot of people who were logging on Thursday just to find out the war was ending. And they were like, no, I've just moved here. I've got to go home now. But you guys gave us a really good war. It was brilliant. I mean, fighting outnumbered a lot of the times was glorious, RvB. Normally we don't fight outnumbered. In the past when we've brought wars to yourselves, we've either blobbed you or it's been pretty even. This time round, a lot of our players got a lot better experience out of the war than previous.
Okay. Let me scroll down. Next question. LoSec has been primarily put to the wayside by CCP, with mostly changes to HighSec and NullSec, but never to LoSec. Why do you think somebody living in LoSec should work for you?
Firstly, hi Doom. And to answer Doom's question, as you know, I dabble in LoSec. I see that there are issues inherent from the way the Retribution, Inferno and Retribution Crime Watch changes affect fights around gates and in LoSec in general. So you should vote for me because I do have experience of LoSec and that there are issues there, and I am vocal about the stuff that I don't like. And some of the shit that happens in LoSec is like, right, okay, why on earth is this happening? It's like you were in Huala that night, Doom, and my fleet had got there early. We had a bunch of battle cruisers, and the only plex that was available was that medium. We could only send cruisers in. We couldn't send anything else in. So we had like 50, 60 battle cruisers twiddling their thumbs. I'd love to see battle cruiser size plexes come back. Things like that, for example. Yeah, those. Sorry, I was just answering somebody in chat.
Mm-hmm. Well, if that's all the questions you guys have, I'm both very surprised, and this is going to be the shortest Q&A ever.
Doom has another.
Oh, there we go. CCP have almost stated that nullsec is the end game, the end-all be-all. Is that your opinion of it, and what do you think about lowsec and highsec in contrast? CCP have stated that?
It's not something that they've directly stated, but when you look at all the publicity they generate for themselves out of events like BTAC-R and 49 TAC over on Serenity recently, they're definitely the events. That's definitely the area of content that they focus on when they want to push this game out to the wider world. Personally, I think that that's wrong. There's just as much, content generation that happens in both high and low as well, and is just as important to the people who take part in it as nullsec content is for the people who live out there. With a sandbox, your end game is what you make of it. Doom's end game is lowsec and all the things he does there. My end game is highsec, and obviously some of the things that my Rome do. I'm happy in my position where I am in Eve. I'm making my own content. I'm making content for other people, and they're all happy with it. So my end game has enough of an effect on other people that they continue to, fly alongside me and play the game because of me. So it would be like Benjita. They could say, right, okay, there's this event happening. It's in its third year. It's going to be happening, rather. It's in its third year. It's become terrorists, for want of a better word. Not that I think they are, but it's the best term that I can think of, really. Or last week's war with E-UNI. That was some really major fights, constantly happening for a week. Both sides pretty much got no respite except for maybe that quiet half an hour before and after downtime. So there we go. There was a whole bunch of people having their very own large-scale combat in highsec, their own sort of end game, so to speak, and yet no publicity on it, nothing mentioned anywhere. and previous wars that RvB and E-UNI had had. I mean, Battle for Egfi back in 2012 was the largest battle in HiSec ever. There was a couple of thousand participants, billions of ISK destroyed, and not really much publicity around that at that time.
All right. Well, I think this one fits nicely. How do you think HiSec warfare and war decks should be changed to make them better, or could be changed to make them better?
I wrote about this recently on my column for Crossing Zebras. It was just, something I pulled together pretty quickly, but they're always in the back of my head. I'd love to see more options for war decks. For example, right, if you read today's dev blog and then the thread on it, there's a lot of people asking, with the upcoming removal of standings requirements for HiSec POS, what are people going to do about all those abandoned POSs lying around? And no doubt the many more to be generated after the summer expansion hits, when people try out industry, then just abandon it and leave the POS up forever and ever. I'd love to see wars that you can tailor to have a short period where you basically go to Concord and say, right, I want a war for 24 hours. Or I want a war for this period and I want to basically hit the assets of this corp. That corp can still choose to defend them if they're active. That corp, and that way you can get an actual fight, or you can just hit the structure. You pay your money, you hit the structure, and then you move on. Obviously, you'd have to change the war deck fees a little for that, but it's something that could be looked at, I am sure. And then that sort of event can also, those sorts of war deck changes can also tie into maybe a more positive force for an actual Merc contract type system to appear as well. Because it would be great, from speaking to some of the Mercs that I've met in my time in game, for them to be able to pick up these short contracts, go hit a structure, go hit this, go do that, and then, be able to get rated and so on how quick they fulfilled the contract, or, how much damage they did on an entity and so on. There's a lot of changes that basically build in from a more varied type of warfare. I mean, for a real life corollary, you have like police actions where the UN will send in peacekeepers, and then if there's a necessity, they might escalate and actually request from member nations more combat focused troops, and then you just see things change based on certain criteria. I'd love to see a war deck system that has that sort of flexibility built in, just without the actual UN anywhere near it.
All right. Next question is going to be, is there anything in particular, aside from UI improvements, that stings you about the game as it is today? And what would you suggest as a fix to it?
Remind me to send Thekla ISK to stop asking me questions like that. But for me, as Thekla knows, it's actually, no, that's a really difficult one, A lot of the things that really bug me about Eve in general are really directly UI related. The list of UI related things that I keep thinking, right, I need this and I need this and I need this, is as long as my arm and just keeps getting longer. I'd love a better system of standings for fleets. I'd love, as an FC, to be able to have my own standings to entities carry over to that fleet for a particular engagement. I'd love kill logs, better kill logs. I want to see logies on kill mails. All those sorts of little details that many people have pressed for in the past.
All right. Next question. What can you tell us about RvB, and how would you contrast it to E-UNI? And as a plus, could you describe RvB Ganked, which you mentioned earlier?
Yeah, sure. Right, I'll take these in order. Vonky started with what is RvB. Basically, Vonky, RvB is two alliances. It started off as two corps that are in an eternal mutual war for no reason at all other than that the founders and framers way back when decided that they wanted a place to just get their pew on without having to roam for hours, without having to deal with random hot drops. Again, high doom. And, you know, all the usual with just going out and trying to find a couple of good fights. With RvB, you can join RvB, jump in a ship, and usually within minutes you're in a fleet or you're out solo, and in our cooperating area you can go out and find something to kill or be killed by. It's absolutely brilliant for what it was. Its simplicity is amazing on that score. As for the difference with what you guys in E-UNI do, you are definitely a more teaching-focused institution. You have some learning by doing. Of course, everyone does. With Eve, that's one of the best ways to learn about the game is don't read about it, do it. You know, just figure it out. Go. RvB is very, very much about learning how to PvP, learning how to act in a fleet, learning how to fix just by doing. Of course, you can ask for advice, you can use our forum. A lot of us do point people to your wiki as well, because sometimes it's just a lot more helpful for people than what you can type in chat while it's moving quickly, or what you can say over comms while a fleet is trying to get something done. So we do have a similar aim in that we want people to get better at the game. We want to turn out members that are well-rounded and, you know, can go off to a greener pastures if they so choose, and they're not going to be a drain or a burden on the groups that they move on to.
I think the Mumble server died on us there for a few minutes.
Oh, right. Hang on. Did you guys get me actually saying what Edmund's question was, at least?
No, sadly.
Okay, right. Basically, Edmund Andre in the channel asked what about the player-built Stargates that Siegel has mentioned in previous announcements in the past. You know, when will we see more on those? My response is basically things like the personal deployable system that Fozzie and other teams have been working on, you know, the ESS, mobile depots and so on. The industry revamp that is happening in the summer expansion, and a lot more things to come, are the building blocks of the necessary changes to allow CCP to implement a system like player-built Stargates. They've got to do all these work changes, all these changes on legacy features to allow them to bring in this new and wonderful expansion to the way Eve works.
All right. Well, I've got to scroll back up and find where we left off.
Jill and Neto, the question on security status.
Yeah, there we go. Okay. Next question. Yeah, if you're listening to the recording, the Mumble server kinda decided to die on us. I hope you got the last response and we didn't skip any questions. No, we didn't. Okay, good. Then we're just gonna pick up where we left off. So next question is, do you believe it is time to overhaul the security status system?
I think some changes are needed too. I'm not quite sure what. I'd really have to sit down and give it a proper thought, but it would be interesting to see changes to that. I mean, I was surprised that so little changes got made to the sex status system when they brought in the new Crime Watch. Well, over Inferno and Retribution when they brought in Crime Watch and changes to it. I was really surprised not to see anything along those lines. But like I say, I can't really say what I'd love to see happen to it without sitting down and giving it a really, really good look. But I will say, Jill, watch this space, because you've piqued my interest with that question. So I think one of my future columns on Crossing Zebras will end up covering something along those lines.
Well,
Not the best answer, I know, Jill, but like I say, you've given me some food for thought with that one.
okay. Well, next question is similar, right? The bounty system pretty much fell flat on its face, and the profession of a bounty hunter simply isn't feasible. Do you believe there's an easy way to make the bounty system not suck?
Hang on, I have a link. Just trying to find. And basically, I've been discussing this very thing recently with another CSM9 candidate, Cyan Ovianda from Noir Academy. And when we looked into the bounty hunter description on the Evo website under the professions on the front page, all it talks about is ratting, is how you hunt NPCs and such things for bounty payments. It doesn't cover the bounty system as we know it now, the one where you can put 100,000 disc on somebody and get mails for infinity. It totally and utterly, once they put that system in and then combined with the terrible description of the bounty hunter profession, basically sounds like they wrote the whole thing off. They thought, yeah, we'll put these bounties on, you can have a laugh with those, and then boom, bye. But that shouldn't be how such a system works. There should be better ways for it. You shouldn't just be able to kill anyone with a bounty and get a share of it. You should have to, I don't know, activate their kill right, and you only get bounties. You only get bounty payment from people whose kill rights you've activated. Things like that. But as I said, another candidate and myself had been discussing it, and he blogged his own thoughts and potential suggestions on it. So I'm going to go ahead and link those in the channel now. If you're listening to this later, you want to look up cyanovianda.blogspot.com, and it should be his most recent article. I'm sure somebody will include it in the forum thread.
I'm gonna post it to the recording thing in the class library. I'm gonna add that once I get the recording up.
No worries, Titus. But yes, Cyan really put a lot of work into this. And the discussion we had just came out of nowhere. We were discussing other things, and this just sort of appeared, and he really went all out on it. But yeah, it's a pretty poor system of hands, and like I said, service with their description of it on their own website. It's just horrible. It really. Next question, Titus.
Oh yeah, Mumble had another hiccup. Okay, hold on. Do you believe that the Vortex system is the best way to handle abandoned starbases, because that doesn't really provide any content?
Right now, that is the only content for it. You know, the only way to deal with it is to war deck. Would I love to see other ways to do it? Yes. I'd love, as many people have said in the past, an extension of the hacking mechanics. Allow people to hack offline bosses, you know, and take them down that way. And that way, you give people who are into the hacking and exploration mechanics something else to do. If they want to, they can go look into bosses and think, right, okay, this one's offline. We'll play the hacking minigame, or a better variation of it at least, and we stand a chance of being able to scoop this boss and take it away and remove all the modules and make a bunch of money that way. And that's that question as far as I'm concerned, Titus.
All right.
I did notice that Thekla asked a question. Wants to know why I die so often. I don't die as often as I used to. You know that one. And that's me answering that one.
Well, all right. We're going to go to the next one, though. Simple one. What's your favorite ship in the game, and why?
Oh, that's a difficult one. I mean, I'm currently sat in my favourite frigate. I'm sat in the Republic Fleet Firetail right now. I absolutely adore that frigate. Always have done. even before its buff last year, I've been flying the Firetail on and off now for, about 4 or 5 years. Pretty much as long as I've been in RvB, I've been flying Firetails. I love it. It's pretty damn versatile for what it is. Obviously, that's thanks to it being Minmatar, so I can go armor, I can go shield, I can go all gank, can just pretty much do whatever I want with it. As for other ships, it's really difficult. I tend to fly different things every week, and it's not usually based on do I like the hull. It's usually based on do I think that this theme and the ship that I'm flying for it, will do what I want that particular theme to do. So yeah, Doom, I think I'll stick to saying the Firetail.
Alright. Salkan asks, have you had a look at the industry draft blog that was posted today? And what's your opinion on that?
Salkan, I read that dev blog about 2 weeks ago. My personal opinion on it is I haven't done industry for, about 5 or 6 years now. Mostly because it was like, get to a certain point with it and it's like, okay then. I'm not going large scale, and I was never going to be a large scale industry guy, but there did seem to be an awful lot of redundancy in screens, a lot of spaghetti code attached, and just so much more bullshit. And to see that CCP have now decided that summer 2014, they're going to revamp the industry system is like, right, I want to do industry again. I mean, some of the things to come, you guys are going to be really, really over the moon about. There's some really good stuff coming in the future dev blogs, just based on what CCP have told the CSM in the past. It's wonderful. But from a personal standpoint, that dev blog really did blow me out of the water. I was really, really enthused when I saw it a couple of weeks ago, and I was really enthused when it got released today, and I've seen an overall positive reception to it from parts of the community that I consider to be my betters when it comes to industry. And that's my answer for that one.
All right. The chat keeps scrolling out on me. It seems to be a bit stupid that one can ruin corp standing simply by talking to an agent without actually accepting any missions. Has this been looked at by CCP, or is it even in the cards? If you're not sure about the mechanics behind that one, corp standing is obviously average.
Oh no, I'm sure about the mechanics behind that one, and all I can say to Serki is I'll make a point of bringing it up. I'm sure that at some point in the future, the standing system is going to be looked at. I mean, we've seen the first, what you could say is the first tentative brush with the standing system, in that in the summer expansion, you won't need standings to put up a POS anymore. So, don't read too much into this. This isn't an NDA leak or anything like that. This is me simply saying that system has to be changed. Some of the rules to it are ridiculously pointless. And if they're willing to remove it for POS, why not go ahead and just remove the whole thing altogether and have a different criteria for maybe advancing down a mission line? But having the ability to mess up a corp standings just by talking to one guy is so bloody annoying. I mean, in RvB right now, we've got, over in Redfed at least, we have 3 guys who have perfect standings with a particular corp down in Carnid that pretty much no one's ever heard of, right? A couple of months ago, we had 2 guys join who'd only just done what you talked about, Serki. They had literally spoken to an agent once. And by them joining RvB, I couldn't direct members to the arse end of Carnid to go and get jump clones on the cheap because of these 2 guys. So I ended up checking their activity and then removing them just to get the standings back. And the 7-day wait was a complete ball ache as well. It was just like, I've now got to wait another 7 days for those standings to come back up after I'd got rid of them, and I couldn't poke people and tell them to go down that way. They had to make other arrangements, and it's just the stupidest thing ever.
Okay. I feel like Pekla's just trying to go on your nerves at this point.
No, Thekla's
yeah.
a friend, and he's enjoying himself.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Anyway, the question is if you would like to weigh in on the discussion about force projection.
Should you be able to cross even in 20 minutes? No. It's a fucking universe, for God's sake. I mean, I don't mind Titans, I don't mind carriers, I don't mind Sino-chains, but there should be some limitations to what you can do in a short amount of time. You know, be it some form of a calibration or what's that wormhole effect? I'm sure somebody knows.
Polarization.
Yeah, something along those lines. You know, just to prevent things like this from being possible as regularly as they are utilized by people. And I'm not just talking about nullsec entities, I'm talking about anyone that uses such means to get themselves from A to B as quickly as possible. Everyone should be affected. I mean, power projection in HiSec's an absolute fucking baller. If it's large enough, as you're moving that fleet, you're tie-dyeing the crap out of everything, because you can't reinforce every system on your route if you've got a 100-man battleship fleet. Especially if you're going more than like 10, 15 jumps. It's just not workable with the current state of technology. So HiSec force projection doesn't exist. We have to do so much preparation in advance. It's unbelievable.
All right.
And that's that one.
Mm-hmm. Next question is going to be, what are your thoughts on PvE in EVE at the moment? Specifically high-end PvE such as incursions?
I've never done incursions. I understand from a lot of the people that I speak to in EVE that have done them that they can be interesting content. There is an element of randomization. But even then, the people that I speak to have turned to me and they basically said, look, Mang, once you know everything about the sites, it's just as easy as doing all fours. You've just got more people in them. So why not have much more variation? Make the AI tougher. Change the way the rats work. Just throw in some surprises there. There really should be a considerable level of challenge to these sorts of affairs. Obviously, I know that the way incursions are now and the way sleepers are is a limitation of the tools that CCP have when it comes to PvE content. You know, and until we see changes on that front, people will just, you know, steamroll this sort of content and make all the risk they can and do it without any sort of challenge. Challenges set up by the players. I mean, all I hear about from people in the incursion communities is how one group is running this site too quickly, or they've closed this incursion down too fast. Get any money. That's the only challenge, is basically trying to find ways to achieve things without other people fucking your stuff up. And that shouldn't be the case. There should be more of a challenge from the actual content when it comes to PvE. There's so many people who do it, and not just as a way to make ISK. They do it because that's what they want to do. They come to EVE to play with spaceships, and for them, playing with spaceships is shooting sentient is shooting sentient pixels, basically. That's what they want to do. And they should have as much challenges from their content as PvPers like myself have from my side of the content.
All right. Next one's a follow-up to the earlier discussion about sex status. Do you believe that the approximately 700 million ISK it currently costs you to get from -10 to 0 security status is too cheap?
No, that's fine. I mean, the last time I had to go from like -3 to 0 again, you know, after spending far too much time shooting brave newbies, it cost a couple of 100 million ISK. I mean, for someone in my position in the game now, I've been around long enough that I've made ISK, and it was a drop in the ocean. But I know for others that they have to put in a bit of work for it. There's a guy in Redford now. He basically goes out suiciding hulks a bloody lot of the time. He's a one-man Hulkageddon. And he went through a phase where any good loot he got, he'd just turn into tags effectively. And even that proved to be a little bit too much for him. So now he's taken to ratting for it. And he's just worked out the best ways and best places for him to rat. So he's actually making money out of it rather than going and... He's making the money sex status, and then he uses some of the S that he makes to also buy tags. So if he's not complaining it's expensive, and then I'm not, and he uses the system a lot more than me. I think it's compared to the older system where people would just rat from neg 10 to 0, it is a better system. I'll definitely say that.
I hear that all wormholers want are wormhole stabilizers to the wormholes. Why isn't this being implemented? It's a great idea.
No, basically, wormhole stabilizers, yeah, it's a A1, number one idea. It should totally come in summer. But being serious, I'd never say that out loud. Wormholers would find out where I live and hurt me. It's an idea that comes up, and it's a great way just to troll wormholers. It really gets the best responses. Seriously does. So if you're ever being pissed off by a wormhole dweller, guys, just mention wormhole stabilizers and how you think they're great. And then just sit back and listen to them rant for a while. It really makes your day go by. But yeah, it's not something I'd like to see. I think that wormholes are in a position within the combat, content landscape of EVE as a whole, that is really unique and should be kept that way as much as possible. And stabilizers would it wouldn't be good. No matter what sort of conditions you put on something like a stabilizer for wormholes, it just would ruin what makes wormholes so special to the people who live in them, to the people who raid them, to the people who, just go on day trips there to maybe ninja mine in the Venture or whatever. Having stabilizers would just spoil it all. And it would just become another part of space that you could roam through for hours and hours and hours and never see anyone. And nobody wants that. And that's me done on that one, dude.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next question. What's your opinion on the current live events? If you're listening to the recording, this is in relation to the Hunt, Kaldari, Navy, Saboteurs, whatever, and get plaques for killing blows thing that CCP is doing.
When they announced this particular tranche of live events last week, I was very surprised that they hadn't spoken to the CSM about them. I could see the issue the second they said that, right, these events are going to have prizes. I mean, as somebody who's ran a prize-driven event before, and, who's run several prize-driven events in the past, I've become rather good at seeing how EVE players will make best use of the tools they are provided with to win those prizes. And doing it based on final blow, just not the way they should have gone about it with current tranche of live events. As to live events as a whole, things that could be done better. I mean, for those who were involved in the Ghost Sites release event last November, where CCP basically had CCP-led fleets, public fleets, head off to Syndicate and Curse, and then they basically got completely decimated. Well, most fleets did. There was one that got through quite well. All the other fleets that went to these events got decimated by residents of nullsec, people who formed up fully organised fleets, proper compositions, and so on. And they just beat these kitchens, poorly led group of players into the ground. And on my own home, the people who were flying with me during my fleet that night. We did okay. We got a few kills, we had a bit of a laugh, we got to the event system just as one of the events, and we got a few more in that system. But yeah, live events, I love seeing them happen. I love the fact that there's this background that CCP can pull from to provide additional content to players who normally would just, go about the day oblivious to what's going on out in the background of the world that you inhabit. I just wish that they'd come to players like myself and, other people who can see potential issues with them and say, right, look at this for us, what's going to go wrong? And then we tell them right from the off. At least they've had issues anticipated. And that's my take on that one.
Okay. Next one. If you could give CCP one order to fix something that they had to obey immediately, what would that be?
Oh, good question, Theo. Basically, if I was Hilmar and the Moneymen for a day, and they had to fix something immediately. Oof. So many options. It would be I'm sure it's going to be unpopular with high-sec dwellers here and, the low-sec guys that are listening in. But, fix SOV. I don't want... When I take ganked into nullsec, I don't want to have to troll around for hours to find a fight, or I don't want to have to think, right, okay, there's a big war going on, and the only place I'm going to get a decent fight out of the locals is by going to that. I'd love to take my fleets out, roam around, and be able to shit on people's doorsteps, ring their doorbell, run up to the end of their garden, get me. Me and my friends are here. Come and fight us. Come on, there's you. Come and fight us. We're bricking your windows, we're egging your house, we're TPing your roof. Stuff like that. As it stands now with the way Null is, it can be hard to find a decent fight out there unless it's over a specific objective. I want more objectives out there to find fights over, not just for me, but for the residents and for other people who like to roam out there. So yeah, probably an unpopular answer in these parts, but that is the one that if I could do it, I'd love to say just get it done. Then let's focus on the rest of the game.
All right. Next one. In the light of the current Caldari Carrier event, do you feel that your feedback, or the feedback of the CSM in general, on the Syndicate/Curse events from last year got ignored?
Thekla, yes, to, be straight out and blunt about it. It did feel like, right, okay, as someone who FC'd rather successfully during that event, and, I know CCP has read my blog on it. I directly linked it to them on their request, and they read other points of view on it mostly from the Zero guys, who were on the other side of the organisation tree there, that and say, basically, you want to do this in the future with such events, you want to do this. It does feel like they have something to do without coming back to any of the games, good feedback. It does feel like they kicked us in the teeth. But as I said at the start, as I said much earlier, my week last week was just hell, so I haven't really been able to touch base with CCP on these events at all and tell them that, yeah, I could have seen all of this happening and ask them if they could have seen any of this coming as well. I'm sure they're going to learn lessons from this again. From this tranche of live events, I'm sure there's going to be many lessons learned, and that hopefully over time, live events won't die the death they did for a few years. They'll just keep adapting and keep making them as good as they can for as many people as they can. The one thing that I have found good about it, and this is definitely something I'm going to raise with them, is where they sourced the rewards from. Using Plex that has come from RMT operations that they've shut down, now that is just brilliant. That was a stroke of genius. That was just beautifully, beautifully done. So they've got one aspect right on these this time round.
Okay.
And that's that one.
Well, the next one, when we will finally get to see the last mail of you in the carrier. I'm assuming that's from RvB Gank 100?
Yeah, on Ganked 100, my carrier eventually died, however did not generate a mail. I've spoken to a few people at CCP over this while I was up in Reykjavik for the Winter Summit, and their logs think of you, that the logs do show something, but the way their logs work, they just can't generate the mail. But saying that, I have seen them disappear and then eventually reappear in the API months or even years down the line. It's like the E-UNI RvB war of 2012. We killed one of your FC's vultures, or a nighthawk, I think it was, one night, and that mail never showed up at all, ever. 6 months later, it appeared down the line. It only showed one person on the mail, but at least it appeared. And it was an API verified mail, so it wasn't a con by anyone. Last year, your POS mail, that thing, you know, when RvB took your POS down last year, that mail still hasn't appeared, but a bunch of pod mails that didn't appear at that point have slowly begun to show up. So I know that somewhere along the line, the API does what it does and looks at the logs, beats them around the head with a stick, and is like, okay, give us that mail. So I have hope that my carrier mail will show up. Mostly because, you know, I lost a carrier once. I want the mail.
All right. Next question is going to be, when was the last time that you had a small gang or solo experience in FacWar space or LowSec in general?
Not for a while. The last time I was out in 3 weeks ago. I went out on a police pursuit comet roam with a couple of the Crossing Zebras hosts and writers, and we basically just ran around, got a few kills, had a bit of a laugh. That was mostly in LowSec, but we were, you know, looking in plexes while we were there. Before that, I hadn't been out in LowSec in a small gang or alone for a long time. I think my last one was last summer in a 10-man gang. And I went out, fought another 10-man gang. That fight got crashed by a bunch of dudes, so we blued up, killed them, and then went back to shooting each other. I'm mostly undocked these days with a few hundred guys behind me. It's what I enjoy at this point in time, though, and, you know, providing that level of experience of EVE for that many people makes me feel pretty good about myself. I'm sad that way.
Yeah. Yeah, you should give advertisement for the upcoming rooms. You guys have upcoming rooms apparently?
Yeah, definitely. As I said, Ganked this weekend is running 3, 4, depending how you look at it, roams over the weekend. On Saturday, we've got 19, Concord Him. We're taking out Autocannon Shield Minmatar. We're going to be roaming around LowSec. When the final Caldari carrier stroke super carrier event starts, we'll be heading over to that, wherever that happens to be. I'll be running a reasonably organised fleet into that. Probably get totally and utterly massacred by PL Napox and Tier 3s, but it'll be worth a go anyway. Sunday, we've got 2 roams. We're taking interceptors out and we're going to go hunt ratters out in renter space. There's always carriers and things out in renter space on a Sunday afternoon. We're going to go find them. Sunday evening, I'm taking an Amar-themed roam out. Newts, armor tank, and we're just going to wander around the south and beat up on CVA because, you know, they're always fun to fight. And then Monday, in Aussie time zone, for any dirty crims that are around, I'm taking assault frigates out. And for those interested, I do have a link to the schedule on my blog. So yeah, we've got quite a weekend lined up for anyone that wants to join a public fleet and have a bit of a laugh. Any more questions, guys? I'm happy to just stay around, keep answering them. So if you've got more, put them into lecture dots, tack E-UNI, and, you know, let's see.
Why don't you fit a Sino to all of your ships? Doom thinks it's a shame and misuse of a high slot, not a one.
Because Doom, you're not on all the time. Who am I going to bat phone if I need to drop on somebody? For those wondering, Doom's in Shadow Cartel, and Doom does like to hot drop anything that moves. I've never been hot dropped by Doom directly, but I've been around when Doom's been around. Shadow Cartel are fun dudes to fight, though. I like it. I do like fighting Shadow Cartel, and quite a lot of the low-sec entities. It can be annoying at times, but it can also be really fun.
Thekla asks if you could just tell the listeners a bit about your Reef career in general. What you did
Yeah,
in
sure.
the past.
As I said, I started in 2007, just when just before the Revelations 2 expansion that altered the new player experience of the time to one that was a little more palatable, and it started new characters with like 900,000 SP at the time, which was glorious. You still had learning skills, which was hell, but you know, it was a fair trade-off. So you could do a lot more when you first started. And I started as Kaldari, obviously, a Chora, like everyone in that particular expansion who started a Kaldari was a Chora. Those horrible, ugly men and the strange Asian-looking women that aren't really that hot. But, you know, that's enough strangeness about my point of view on that. But rather than going missiles like other Kaldaris did, I went hybrids. I've been using guns. I've been using hybrids as a Kaldari forever. I love my guns. I love the idea of big, huge guns pointing at people and just blasting them out of the sky rather than missiles and, you know, going AFK for a bit. I was around when salvaging came in, so I made my first couple of billion from salvage. I used to mine. Mangala can actually fly exhumers, I think it is. Barges. I can fly barges, I can't fly exhumers. I'm not that much of a sadist on my main. But yeah, I used to mine on Mangala. I used to know exactly which missions you could complete everything bar one rat, and then you could mine the mission out. Over time, I joined a high-sec industry corp that used to do mining and building for other entities. It had contracts with various different groups, and I, you know, helped them out. I became a director with them for a while. Then some friends who played Warhammer with me, we came over to EVE, set up our own corp, and, you know, we were one of those corps that advertised ourselves as doing PvP, as doing PvE, as doing industry. You know, typical high-sec corp that says it does a bit of everything, but we actually did, because we all had ADD when it came to content. It was like, right, yeah, what we're going to do today? We'll go here. We used to roam around low-sec and roam into Provi for shits and giggles, and the numbers of times that Provi defense fleets back in 2009 and early 2010 came after us. 5 guys in frigates and you're getting chased down by like 50 guys in battle cruisers. It's like, oh, holy fuck, Providence. At the same time, as doing that, I also had alts in RvB 1 and RvB 2. And then over time, I just put Mangala in RvB 2, and I've been there ever since, doing everything that I do, and becoming a rather loud voice in that particular room. As to how I made my ISK, like I say, I made my first couple of billion from salvage, and, you know, some missions as well. And then after that, I got into station trading, which is great. When you're working and you can station trade on the other screen, it's brilliant. And sold characters. I've done a bit of scamming. I mucked around with contract scams way back in the day with the old contract system. So, you know, I've dabbled in enough that at this point in time, I just throw ISK at things.
All right. Next one. What do you think could or should be done about the blue donut in nullsec? Or should anything be done about it?
I don't think can solve the blue donut with a game mechanic. People are people. You know, people will make alliances. People will protect their stuff by making alliances with people who are more than likely to want their stuff. You see that with the botload accords. Before that, you saw it with OTEC. So people will always make alliances. They will form larger and larger groups, even outside of those allowed by the game mechanics. You can't prevent humans being humans, basically. Would I love to see a more, combat is good for the game. You know, it keeps things evolving. It keeps pushing away. It's to piss somebody off, to disrupt their activities. We need more tools like that. The ESS itself is a great concept when it comes to disruption gameplay. Considerably more tools along those lines would be brilliant, especially out in nullsec. And that's my answer for that one.
Okay. Next one. Have you played EVE without any interruption in all these years? And if you did, what kept you interested all this time? And if you didn't, which expansion and/or particular feature brought it back?
Like I say, I started playing in like 06, so it's over 7 years really at this point. I went travelling overseas in the summer of 07 for 3 months. I went around Central Asia. You know, like Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Turkey, Georgia, Armenia, Silesia, places like that. But that's the only actual break I've taken from EVE. It was, right, I'm going overseas. I did trust somebody to do my training, but they never bothered because they're a complete idiot. And, you know, account sharing is against the rules, guys. But yeah, I've never taken a break as a result of burnout on EVE. I've only ever taken breaks when I've gone overseas. I went overseas again in early 2010, but I took a netbook with me and just carried on training while I was overseas. Carried on logging in. I talked to people whenever I could. Couldn't really undock it because, lol, it's a netbook. I've never taken an actual, right, okay, I'm burned out on EVE break, you know? So no feature brought me back. Just being able to regularly log into the game and undock and do stuff brought me back. And basically being able to do stuff in game, do whatever I want with, you know, pretty much no real limits on what I want to achieve in the game is what's kept me playing all these years. I love the idea of a sandbox. I mean, I love doing what I do now. I lead a group of people that, you know, share, well, through Ganked, I lead a group of people that shares my vision on how the game should be played. You know, we play it for fun. We go out once a week. We go to events. We do this. We do that. Because that's what we want to do in game. If tomorrow, you know, if this weekend nobody showed up for Ganked, I'd probably start to get disheartened. And if that continued to happen, I'd know that people don't share my view anymore. And I'd probably then take a break. That's my answer on that one, dude.
Okay. Next one. Can you weigh in on EVE tournaments? For example, do you find them interesting to watch? Do you believe that CCP sufficiently supports them in terms of publicity? And do you think CCP should support player-run tournaments like the SCL more?
Nice question, Thekla. The only tournament I really enjoy watching is the AT. There's just... I've been watching the AT for as long as I've been playing EVE. It was always a big thing. I'd watch it, you know, on my own, and then friends in real life and other people who, you know, I've either tried to get into EVE or have at least tried to take an interest in my hobbies. They sit down and watch it with me now. It's become an event now where people that don't even follow the game will come and watch it with me. They're not huge gamers or anything, but they can kind of understand what's going on, that people are fighting for pride, for prizes, and, you know, for them it's like some of the larger football contests, or soccer if you're a dirty American. But the other tournaments, I just can't really get into them. NEO put me off with the prize money aspect. I really don't like that. It's a personal choice. I'm not a fan of, you know, gaming for money. I don't buy into that whole professional gaming scene, you know, in like games like LoL and Dota and StarCraft 2 and all of that. I just don't see the attraction in those sorts of things, especially when you throw money in it. As for the SCL and other player-run tournaments, I'd love to see more tools provided by CCP. Not necessarily the tool of Fozzie going into the office on the weekend, but more tools that let player-run tournaments mimic the AT. You know, more features provided within the game that allows for those tournaments to happen, be it the fancy display that they use, be it ways to teleport to an arena area like Jove Space, such things like that, so that these tournaments can happen. They just don't need as much CCP support. CCP should provide the tools, let the players take those events where they will.
All right. Doom has another CSM question, apparently. When are they going to make it so that one can create a contract with boosters in the cargo hold, or illegal items in general?
That's a pretty good question. I don't know if you saw it, Doom. There was a thread in Features and Ideas about contracts, and that came up quite a few times in that thread. A few of us have pointed CCP at certain responses we liked from it. Some of the CSM have made their own responses in the thread based on our own issues with the contract system. I know that the team that posted the thread are actively looking at it, and I think that they may well be looking into boosters. Obviously, I don't want to confirm anything just for me to get shot on by CCP from a great height, but for the team that posted that thread to have posted that thread without any fanfare to the CSM means they're looking at these things on their own, and that they know there's issues with the contract system. They just wanted the feedback, and the thread that they posted gave so much good feedback that I think that as an overall, as an overhaul of the contract system, we may see the ability to put boosters in the cargo hold. I mean, I'd love to see the legality of boosters completely removed. I don't see the point of them being illegal. Because that's also an annoying aspect of boosters when it comes to contract systems, is the whole illegality of it.
All right. Next one. Do you think it's good for the game, or do you think it's a loss for the game, that many old names, such as Bob, are being held as inactive holding corporations instead of being allowed to re-emerge?
Corporations die. Alliances die. And if people out there take advantage of that, or, the people in charge of those alliances, when they eventually fold and those of them, then so be it. I mean, the real-life companies get bought up and change hands and names disappear all the time. You just live with it and move on. You know the people are still out there, they're just out there in other bodies. I mean, look at PL. A lot of the member corps from there are from places like Mercenary Coalition, NCDOC, many of the old Bob Corps. Then, of course, as Thecla just linked in the channel, there's the original Goonswarm Alliance, which has a whole bunch of history attached to why that exists and why Goonswarm Federation exists.
All right. Next one, discuss the change that player-owned customs offices brought to HiSec.
Oh, those were so much fun. Back when customs offices were first announced as a thing a few years ago, I was pretty gutted that they weren't coming to HiSec. And then when CCP told us during the Summer Summit that they were, it's like, oh Jesus, I was so happy. Just as a way to get more fights. For me, anyway. And I've had a few good fights out of Pocos. And I've had fun with Pocos. RvB now owns 400 of the things up in the Forge and a few other areas. We have a decent tax rate. They're really, really, really well utilised. They've been really good fun. We've had some good times out of them. I'm sure that just about anyone holding a Poco somewhere has had maybe one or two fights as a result of owning. Absolutely the best thing for me that came out of Rubicon was player-owned customs offices. I mean, for those of you in the uni, you got a really, really great fight out of me on Thursday because of a Poco. I wanted a structure mail in Aldrat. Felt that I was owed one after being on vacation during the war last year. Not that that structure mail ever showed up anyway, but at least I got a structure mail out of Aldrat. All because of Pocos.
All right. Well, we've reached the end of the question line again. Oh, there we go. Can you expand on your proposed ballot for the CSM9 election and why did you put these people where they are?
Basically, Thekla, I went with a mix of some of the standout incumbents from the 8th CSM that I feel like want to continue some of the work that we've started over this past year, and I think that all the people I recommended from CSM 8 have been stellar. They've been really good, and they deserve the opportunity to carry on the work that we've started and to see some of the things that we've been told about come home, so to speak. The other candidates are just great in that they'll round out the various different aspects of the CSM. There's people like and fitting and ship balance and ship design in general. There's hang on, I keep scrolling my mouse too far. Then of course there's the community people like Xander, who has a great community presence. Someone with the ability to listen and who basically is finger on the pulse of the community is really needed on the CSM. Someone who really can say to CCP, look, this is shit, stop it. This is why it's shit. The community is really fucked off with what you've done here. Someone who won't pussyfoot around when it comes to the things the community really, really cares about, be it Sommergate, and dare I say it, the Aero 1 incident of the past month or two. Xander will be great just on that basis. Steve Ranukin, as we've seen with the confirmation today that summer 2014 is an industry expansion, why not have an industry guy, another industry guy, a high-sec focused industry guy on board, someone who'll listen to high-sec industrialists, the smaller scale industrialists, people who do industry in a different way to the large block industrialists that Minna can speak for. The low-sec candidates. Sugar Kyle, she's going to be amazing. She is going to be on CSM9. I'm proud to have recommended her because of her experience in LowSec. She has done brilliant work with her market endeavours out in Malden Heath. She knows enough about LowSec. She knows what she doesn't know. And then there's people like Funky Bacon. Faction Warfare needs another representative. They had Hans a couple of years ago. They need Funky this year. More aspects of Eve. Make the CSM a rounder, more knowledgeable representation of the Eve populace. The only place that really falls down when it comes to representation on CSM9 is going to be HighSec. Yeah, I live in HighSec, but I spend half my time everywhere else. And when I am in HighSec, I'm not doing what half of you HighSec guys do because I don't need to anymore. So people like Mike and, and Steve again, and other people who have some HighSec aspects, it's too hard to get HighSec behind a single candidate or a couple of candidates because most people in HighSec, they log in, they shoot their rats, they put their industry jobs on, then they log off. It's really difficult. As for block votes, organised groups will organise. Unions do it in real life. Political parties do it in real life. Eve has mirrored real life even in the political sphere by this point. And it's been truly amazing to see it happen. I mean, many people say that I'm a block candidate, but as I explained about RvB before, we're not all mains. Not everyone in RvB is a main. There's a fuck ton of alts. RvB isn't really a block.
Okay. We've got one more from Mumble Chat. What are your
seeing
thoughts?
Seeing block politics happening. Go on.
Okay. What are your thoughts on off-grid boosting? Will it be improved to not be as riskless?
I want links on grid. Flat out. I got asked this in my thread, and I want links on grid. Totally want links on grid. Why should you be able to benefit people from provide such solid benefits to your fleet from anywhere in system when just about every other effect on the fleet is happening on grid. You know, reps don't carry all the way across system. Tracking doesn't carry all the way across system. Damps don't carry all the way across system, so why should boosts? I mean, as it stands at this point, they've started on the path. I think that CCP have started on the path to looking at putting links on grid. Obviously, mining boosts are always going to be different. Well, let me clarify that. Low sec and null sec mining boosts are always going to be different, or what people use for boosts in low sec and null sec. There should be some protection offered to those, and CCP have gone with that, and they're still allowed to boost from inside POS. But in high sec, where do you just X up in channel if you mine in high sec with an Orca? Just X up in the channel if you mine in high sec with Orca boosts. Oh wow, no miners. But yeah, basically, people running Orca boosts in high sec, those Orcas are never in the POS. Where are the boosts from an Orca? They're on grid with you while the Orca is doing other things, while it's tractoring cans, while you're transferring ore into it or whatever. The links from mining op are on grid. So there's a group of people in EVE who do shit with their links on grid, so why can't other people do shit with their links on grid? And even though the people who mine with links on grid have the option to put them somewhere else, they don't. They mine with them there. So combat should be the same. You should put those boosts on the line. It would certainly make for much more tactical fights. Some might say, yeah, but Mang, it might just reduce some of the fights that happen. It might reduce some of the fights that you get into. It might reduce some of the epic that you've taken part in the past few years. But no, I say to them, no. It will make everything about fights on a grid a lot more tactical, a lot more interesting. If I could see them during a CSM 9 term, I'd be over the moon. But to be honest, I could see them a year down the line during CSM 10, and, I'd still be...
All right. Well, once again, it's the end of the question so far. We're going to give it a few more minutes for people who think of questions, and if we don't get any, we're going to finish up.
Yeah, if anyone's got any more questions, guys, feel free. I'm a little bit hoarse at this point, but yeah, I've got one or two more answers in me if anyone's got anything.
There we go. This is a controversial topic, but what are your thoughts on the fact that as time in EVE passes, the gap between new players and veteran players is going to grow bigger and bigger, especially in skill points?
I don't think the gap is as obvious, is as there as people make it out to be. A new player is still massively useful, even with only, a couple of 100,000 SP. They're useful in just about any environment. I think even incursions, there's groups out there that have new players running as their drone bunnies. So, in your high-end PvE, new players can find a place. Yeah, you can't do all the things that an older player can do, but that older player can't do everything that they want to do. Around needs to sino other people, needs ults to sino himself. And an older player may have Logi V, but they like to fly around in a DPS ship. They themselves with that skill. It's all about how the new player specializes. If a new player chooses to spread their SP around and just dabble A to B to C and so on, of course they're not going to catch up. They're not going to be able to perform as well as a veteran player. But if those new players specialize in a particular area, they will often beat the crap out of a vet who may well have dabbled. Hell, you don't want to see what my skill plans were like for my middle 3 years. The middle 3 years of me training Mangala was, right, what looks shiny this week? And it literally was a case of, right, and I'd get bored of it and train something else. I couldn't really do the things that I wanted to do. And I'd be looking at older players that could fly this, or I can't quite fly that fit. I don't want to go on this road. I don't want to do this because I can't do X or Y. But then over time, I looked at how I was training my alts. All my alts have been trained. You know, I've taken all of my alts on a much better path than my main. I wish I'd been able to do that with Mangala, but I never really had the true focus. And hell, the first couple of years, or the first year or so of my game time was an awful lot of learning skills and an awful lot of fitting skills. The learning skills were hell. You guys really, really aren't missing anything with those. Be thankful you don't have those on top of any perceived gap. I don't think the gap is as huge as some people perceive it to be. It just depends how you train your character, how you utilize your character. You know, make use of it the best way. I'm not saying min-max, you know, I'm not saying get that deep into Eve that you have to min-max, but use all the resources available to you, from the E-UNI wiki to the Goon wiki to Evo, even though Evo's horrible, to various Twitch channels people are setting up. Use the resources that are out there provided by parts of the community to help direct how you want to play the game a little bit. And of course, put some thought in for yourselves. Eve doesn't give you everything on a plate, and it shouldn't make it easy for everyone, is what I'm trying to say, really. Part of the challenge of Eve, part of what is absolutely beautiful, that I can do that, and that what I train, how I play my character, it's on me. It's not a result of anything else. It's all my own fault. It's my decisions that caused me to make these choices. I think I've gone on with that one a bit too much and started rambling, Titus.
No worries at all. I'm just gonna take the next one then. Pretty generic one. What advice would you give to a new player that's just starting Eve, I suppose?
Yeah, Zenthu's question. Hang on, I'm just looking at his profile. I'm always nosy. When I get questions like that, I always check the player out. So, Zenthu, you started back in 2011. I take it that was just answering chat. Yeah. Basically, if you heard my previous answer about making your own way, finding an aspect of the game that you really want to focus on, do that. I mean, for instance, you might want to be the best incursion FC ever. Focus on your ship fitting skills, focus on learning incursions, constantly join incursion communities, pay attention, listen, and apply the things that you learn from those people. And become the best tackler in Eve. Then in that case, specialize into your small ships. You know, look at getting an income source for tacklers, because those things can add up when you're throwing a lot of them around. There's, you know, can play Eve. And I don't want to say, right, do this, do this, do this. But at the same time, saying do this, do this, do this, objective. Once you've hit that objective, look around you and think, right, I've reached the objective I set myself. It might be to be a tackler. It might be to be an FC. You know, it might be to be the next head of E-UNI. Once you've reached that goal, look around. See if you like the landscape that you've created for yourself. And if you don't, then look at what else the game has to offer and see how the skills, and both soft skills that you know, you learn along the way, and the skills coded into the game, see how those that you learned meet in one objective can direct you towards another objective and make the achievement of that goal better, or even like that, really. But whatever you do, don't get trapped into the cycle of thinking all you have to do is live in high sec, mission, mine, until you have some predetermined amount of ISK, predetermined amount of skill points before you can go on and do something different. Don't think that you have to have 100 million SP and be able to fly a cap to go and join a nullsec alliance, or you have to fly a perfect damnation or absolution to go join Snuffbox. Although to join Snuffbox you've got to be a really, really bitter individual and post on Failheap rather than do anything in game, but that's by the by. So yeah, just set yourself goals. And you're in the EVE University. Their wiki is a major source of information. I'm happy to answer mails from players like yourself, dude.
Do you think CCP should be responsible for generating more content? And if so, what kind of content could it be?
When it comes to content that players can interact with, I think that when it comes to the PvE side of things, and to a lesser extent live events, CCP should do as much as they can to provide for that. As I said earlier, there is people who play this game, of those individuals that fell for the Star Citizen Kickstarter scam, and that's my personal opinion. I'm not going to get in an argument. But yeah, they play EVE for spaceships, and they just shoot their rats. Give them better content on that score. Live events, yeah, I want to see more content from those as well. I mean, we got asked during the Winter Summit, and I was 50-50 on whether CCP should do more or less. But I obviously, with the current tranche of live events that they're doing, I've started to swing to, I want to see more of those, but I want more player input in how they'll be done. There's a ton of us in the community that like live events. There's whole channels dedicated to taking part in live events. There's whole groups of people that organise based on that. Hell, a CCP employee used to be a big live events participant. Logibro used to be called Griderus, and he was a massive, massive voice in the live events community. But at the same time as that, I think EVE being a sandbox, content is up to us as the players. We make our own content. And if you don't make your own content, if you're not out doing something, then you just become content for somebody else. You become content for people like me, who love making events, who love running public fleets, who love fighting wars. If you're not out finding your own way in EVE, finding your own way, the things you enjoy, and creating content for yourself, you just become food for other players. And that's my answer for that.
All right. Looks like we've got one more. What's your next major goal in EVE?
Apart from get elected to CSM 9?
Assumedly.
Yeah, basically get elected to CSM 9, see some of the things that we've discussed with CCP come to fruition. Otherwise, it's continue doing what I do, I want to see Ganked get bigger, and not just Ganked. I want to see all the MPSI communities in EVE become more popular. I want to see more public groups out there. Right now you have the Incursion communities, which do public PvE. You have Ganked, Spectre Fleet, Redemption Road, the Tuskers, and Flying Dangerous running some public fleets. I want to see more of that, and if I happen to be at the center of it all, like a spider in a web, then so be it. And I'm sure that if I really put my mind to it, I could get more and more people out there doing more public fleets, helping other people have a go at PvP, from in high sec, or giving people who live in low sec or null sec or wormhole an opportunity to have a bit more fun when it comes to PvP, because there's not so much on the line beyond the ship. You're not fighting for your land, you're not fighting to secure your ratting areas or anything like that. You're just out for a laugh. If I can, over the next year or two, see many more public groups spring up in EVE and have a hand in those being created, then I'll consider my time in EVE very well served.
All right. Next one's about the inner workings of the CSM. How exactly do communication and feedback between CSM and CCP devs work in practice? And do you ever meet them in real life apart from FanFest?
Circuit, CSM especially CSM8, we're very, very active on Skype with the developers. We have fortnightly meetings with one of the teams. I'm hoping that during the term for CSM9 we can expand that to regular meetings. When I say regular meetings, these are meetings over link or Skype video, so we can actually get shown things, demonstrated things on presentation format and whatnot. That happened during CSM9 with more teams that may be working on a feature at a certain point. Although saying that, some of the meetings that we've have had people from other teams in. So yeah, Skype, we're always active. We have a forum section, but as people who've heard me talk about Evo before, I hate Evo. So I'm not as active on the forums as I am on other forums because Evo's forum software is terrible, but other people in the CSM, they're posting monsters, so they're really active there. As for do we meet them at other times? Yeah, CSM has 2 summits a year. We have various players that attend these summits, and going forward, you'll be people, and well, I think the process is now the CSM votes for the people it wants to go to the summits. CCP look at those people, and if they're relevant to potential future content, they're invited along to the summits. And on top of that, I went to E-Vegas last year. I met devs at E-Vegas, and I had some pretty good talks with them. I met a lot of the devs that I'd not met before at FanFest, or I'd not met at previous meets down in London, here in the UK. We do have other opportunities to meet the developers, as all of you do. You know, it's not just FanFest. Developers show up at some of the weirdest places. There's devs showing up at meets in Glasgow. There's devs showing up at meets in Amsterdam. Like I say, I met some in London. They even unveiled the Retribution expansion in London a couple of years ago to a bunch of drunken players in a pub in the middle of the city. It was brilliant. Fozzie, whenever he's in Canada, I think makes a point of showing up at various Canada meets, especially the ones local to him. So you guys can meet them nearly as much as we do and interact with them nearly as much as we do at Eve meets.
All right. Next one. Do you feel the risk versus reward model is overall balanced, or do you believe it needs to be rebalanced somewhere?
That's a difficult one, and I will be honest, that is a really difficult one. As I said, I'm comfortable in Eve. I don't worry about ISK or anything. So, you know, I could get ganked tomorrow in a freighter with a fuck ton of stuff in it. Not that I could fly one, but if I did, it wouldn't bother me. So it's really difficult for me to answer that question because I'm long since the stage of worrying about how much effort I'm putting in and what I'm getting back. I'm sorry that I can't answer it better, Dan, but it is a difficult question from my point of view after 7 years of playing the game. Trying to remember the time when I would have to consider the effort I was putting in versus the reward I was getting out, it's just like, oh my god, I'd have to really think about those days way back when you used to have to, you know, walk to cheetah backwards uphill in the snow carrying a sack of coal that you might get robbed of.
All right. Looks like we're at the end of the question line again. So, well, once again, we're going to give it a few minutes to see if any more questions appear.
No, I think, you know, we could call it there. I'm sure you guys have got other things to be doing rather than, you know, listen to me go on and on and on again. You know, coming on and answering the questions that have been asked, even the fun ones from my friends. It has been really great being, you know, having the opportunity to speak to you guys. Enjoyed it last year. I enjoy it on the odd times I pop onto your Mumble and just answer random questions or hang around in various channels and listening to stuff. So it's great that you offer this to people, and that, you know, your classes are public these days as well is, again, something positive. I love the work that you guys are doing.
Well, yeah, we wouldn't be able to provide it if people like you wouldn't, well, dedicate their time to us and allow people to just ask the questions. So yeah, well, thanks a lot for joining us today, Mang. thanks a lot to everybody that joined us, that posed questions,